The gate squealed like a wounded animal, its rusted hinges groaning under the weight of years. I stood there, breath fogging in the crisp mountain air, staring at the lock I'd bolted shut after the last uninvited guest. My cabin, my sanctuary, perched on the edge of Pine Hollow, was supposed to be my escape from the world's noise. But Karen Whitaker, the HOA president with a clipboard and a vendetta, had other plans. She wanted my gate open wide open for the neighborhood's aesthetic unity. I'd laughed when she first sent the letter, her loopy cursive demanding I tear down the only thing keeping my peace intact. But now, here she was, her SUV idling at the end of my dirt drive, horn blaring like a war cry. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was about control. I'd bought this plot 3 years ago, after Mom passed. The cancer took her fast, but not fast enough to spare her the pain. I'd sit by her hospital bed, her hand cold in mine, promising her I'd find a place where I could breathe again. This cabin, with its sagging porch and wildflower-dotted yard, was that promise. I'd spent every weekend fixing it up, sanding the splintered deck, planting lavender that filled the air with a soft, sweet hum. The gate, though, that was non-negotiable. It kept out the world, the Karens, the chaos. But Karen Whitaker didn't care about promises or peace. She cared about rules. Her rules. She stepped out of her SUV, her heels sinking into the gravel like knives. "Open the gate, Mr. Callahan," she shouted, her voice sharp enough to slice through the pine-scented quiet. Her blonde bob gleamed under the noon sun, not a hair out of place, but her eyes were wild, like a hawk spotting prey. I leaned against the porch rail, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, letting the silence stretch. The forest hummed crickets, distant birds, the faint rustle of leaves. I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of a quick fight. "You got a warrant, Karen," I called back, voice low but steady. Her lips twitched, a snarl barely contained. She clutched her clipboard tighter, like it was a shield. "This is a violation of HOA bylaws. Section 4, subsection B. All properties must maintain open access for community cohesion." I almost choked on my coffee. Community cohesion. This was a mountain retreat, not a gated suburb. Half the cabins were empty most of the year. The only cohesion was the deer grazing in my yard at dawn. I set the mug down, the ceramic clinking softly against the wood. My land, my gate, my choice. You don't get to dictate what I do here. Her face reddened, a flush creeping up her neck. She marched closer, heels wobbling, and jabbed a manicured finger toward the lock. "You think you're above the rules. I'll have this gate torn down by tomorrow if you don't comply." Her voice cracked, shrill, like a kettle left too long on the stove. I could smell her perfume now overpowering. Floral, cheap. It clashed with the clean earthiness of the forest. That's when I heard it, a faint crunch of tires on gravel. Not from her SUV, but from farther down the road. Another car. I squinted, shielding my eyes against the sun. A beat-up pickup rolled into view, dust swirling in its wake. Karen didn't notice, too busy ranting about fines and legal action. The truck stopped, and out stepped an older man, maybe 60, with a gray beard and a flannel shirt that looked like it had seen better decades. He carried a toolbox, the kind that rattled with loose screws and hope. "Trouble here, Jake," he called, voice gravelly but warm. Karen spun around, her clipboard nearly slipping from her grip. "Who are you?" she snapped, sizing him up like he was a stray dog. The man, Hank, my neighbor from 2 miles down, tipped his cap, unfazed. "Just checking on my friend." Heard the commotion from my porch. I hadn't seen Hank in weeks. Not since he'd helped me fix a leak in the cabin's roof. His sudden appearance felt like a lifeline, but I didn't know why he was here now. His eyes flicked to Karen, then back to me, a silent question in them. "Hank, this is Karen Whitaker, HOA president," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "She's got a problem with my gate." Hank chuckled, a low rumble that seemed to shake the tension loose. "Gate's been here longer than you, ma'am. Ain't hurting nobody." Karen's jaw tightened, and she took a step toward him, heels grinding into the dirt. "This isn't your concern, sir." This is between me and Mr. Callahan. Hank raised an eyebrow, setting his toolbox down with a thud. Reckon it's my concern when you're yelling loud enough to scare the elk. The air felt heavier now, like the moment before a storm. Karen's eyes darted between us, calculating. She wasn't used to being challenged. Not like this. I could see it in the way her fingers twitched, the way her breath hitched. She was losing her grip, and she knew it. I'll call the board, she hissed, pulling out her phone. You'll both regret this. I sighed, long and slow, the weight of her threats settling into my bones. I didn't want a war, but I wasn't opening that gate. Not for her. Not for anyone. Hank leaned against his truck, fishing a cigarette from his pocket. The flick of his lighter was a small, defiant sound in the quiet. You ever think maybe folks just want to be left alone? He said, blowing out a plume of smoke. Karen ignored him, her fingers flying over her phone. I caught a glimpse of her screen text to someone named Gary, probably another HOA lackey. My stomach twisted. This wasn't going to end with a polite agreement. Karen wanted blood. The next hour blurred. Karen paced, muttering about lawsuits. Hank stayed, tinkering with his toolbox like he had all the time in the world. I stood my ground, the gate's lock glinting in the sun like a dare. Then, the distant wail of sirens cut through the trees. My heart sank. Karen smirked, triumphant, as red and blue lights flashed down the road. 2 police cruisers pulled up, kicking up more dust. Officers stepped out, one tall and lanky, the other stocky with a buzz cut. What's the issue here? The lanky one asked, his badge catching the light. Karen launched into her spiel, words tumbling out like a rehearsed script. Violation of bylaws. Uncooperative homeowner. Threat to community standards. She gestured wildly at the gate, her voice rising with every word. I crossed my arms, waiting. Hank lit another cigarette, the smoke curling upward like a ghost. The officers listened, faces blank, until Karen finally ran out of steam. You done? The stocky one asked, his tone flat. Then he turned to me. This your property, sir? I nodded, my throat tight. Bought it 3 years ago. Built the gate myself. The lanky officer walked over, inspecting the lock. Got a deed. I did. Tucked in a drawer inside. I fetched it, the paper crinkling in my hands as I handed it over. The officer scanned it, then looked at Karen. Ma'am, this is private property. You're standing on his land without permission. Karen's face froze, her mouth half open. Excuse me. I'm the HOA president. I have every right. The stocky officer cut her off. HOA doesn't own this land. He does. You're trespassing. The word hit like a thunderclap. Karen's eyes widened, her clipboard slipping to the ground with a soft thud. Hank snorted, grinding his cigarette into the dirt. I felt a rush of something relief. Maybe. Or vindication. The air smelled sharper now, like pine and justice. Ma'am, you need to leave, the lanky officer said, his voice firm but calm. Karen stammered, her hands shaking as she retrieved her clipboard. This isn't over. She spat, backing toward her SUV. But the officers weren't done. The stocky one stepped forward, pulling out handcuffs. Actually, it is. You were warned last month about entering private property without consent. We got a call about you doing it again. My jaw dropped. Last month. What else had Karen been doing? Hank caught my eye, a faint grin tugging at his lips. She's been poking around other folks' land too, he murmured. Heard it from Millie at the diner. The pieces clicked. Karen's reign of terror wasn't just about my gate. She'd been bullying anyone who didn't bow to her rules. The officers cuffed her, her protests echoing as they led her to the cruiser. The SUV's engine still hummed, a lonely sound against the forest's quiet. As the cruisers pulled away, Karen's face pressed against the window, her eyes burning with fury. I exhaled, the tension draining from my shoulders. Hank clapped a hand on my back. Good gate, he said, picking up his toolbox. Keeps out the riffraff. I laughed, the sound raw and real, like the first breath after a long dive. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. I stood by the gate, my fingers brushing the cold metal. This was my home. My promise to Mom. My piece of peace. Karen could fight her battles from a cell tonight. Me. I'd sleep with the windows open. The lavender's scent drifting in. The gate locked tight. Freedom wasn't just keeping people out, it was choosing who to let in.